Hey guys, so with YCS Charlotte concluding, there's been a lot of the topping lists that have been posted on YouTube recently, so as usual I thought I'd break down the most played hand traps and side deck staples. Now a big thanks to Bold Spider who collected most of the topping YCS lists and shared them with me, and she does have a channel of her own, so make sure to check it out, link in the description below. So as you would have seen by now, this was the top 32 breakdown, and a big thanks to Carlancho's store for creating this pie chart. The biggest takeaway was that Prank Kids was the best deck, and the Brave and DPE engines were just everywhere and probably need to take some hits on the next list. Now out of these 32 decks, 28 lists were a part of this analysis, as the remaining 4 lists were not available, at least at the time that I made this video. So let's start with a breakdown on deck sizes, because lately we've been seeing a lot of these pile decks. So as you see here, at least among the 28 lists that were available, most of the lists were either between 41 to 45 cards or the 60 card pile. Traditionally, people always try to make their deck lists around 40, but looks like we're straying away from that nowadays, and it's still resulting in competitive success. Now as for the number of hand traps played in the main deck among the topping list, this ranged from a whopping 0 to 20 hand traps, with a median of an absolutely crazy 15 hand traps. Now keep in mind that usually the median number ranges from around 6 to 9 in all of my previous YCS or LCS top cut breakdowns, so this is a ginormous jump. Of course, a lot of decks are playing 60 cards, which means in terms of absolute count of hand traps, there's bound to be more. But if you look at the proportion of hand traps played in the main deck relative to their deck size, then the median was still 28%, which is still higher than what it was before for the last YCS, which was around 22%. If you look at the number of hand traps played in the side, this ranged from 0 to 14 cards with a median of 6, which is actually the same as it has been in the past events. Now as for the going second board break cards in the deck, such as monster effect negations like Droplets or Dark Ruler, or back row hate cards like Twin Twisters and Lightning Storm, this ranged from 0 to 9 cards in the main, but surprisingly a median of 0 cards in the main. Guess everyone's just focusing on hand traps instead, at least in the main, and when you look at it as a proportion relative to the deck size, this ranged from 0 to 17% with a median of 0%. Now keep in mind that even though technically you can argue cards like Ice Dragon's Prison or Torrential Tribute can still be used going second to break boards, I didn't count them as board breakers in this analysis since that's not really in the same category of traditionally going second cards. In the side though, the board breakers range from 0 to 12 cards with a median of 5 cards, which is still a bit of a decline compared to 6 cards in the last YCS event. Now to cover the top 10 most played hand traps and staples as usual, starting at number 1 to regain the top hand trap crown is Ash Blossom. Really generic, and because of the absolute rampant play of Fusion Destiny, Ash is really needed right now. And number 2 is Ghost Ogre, which has been seeing a lot of play because of the Brave token engine, and this card can be pretty clutch against it. The card can also be good against Floowandereeze and their field spell, and this card was played all in the main, at least among the topping lists that were available. Tied at number 2 is Nibiru, which at the start of the format people felt that this card was not good anymore because the Brave engine can spit out that Omni Negate early, but in fact it has regained popularity lately, especially with all of these combo piles going on. Next we have Gamma, which also gained popularity lately for its ability to destroy on top of negating the monster effect. Interestingly, most lists sided this card if they played it, and it will automatically take up 4 slots because of the driver, so definitely showing how these players are finding that the card is that worth it. After that we have Effect Failure, where monster effect negation is just really useful, and this card can be quite good for prank kit players since they can potentially draw it off of pranks and it would still be live on the opponent's turn, unlike drawing an imperm off of it. Speaking of imperm, this card was tied with Failure in terms of how often it was played. Really versatile card and is good for effect negation, but also to potentially shut off floodgates for a turn. And then we have Token Collector, which has shown to be popular at the last YCS event as well. Considering the number of decks that play the Brave engine, on top of all the combo piles that summon out tokens through Auroradon or Link Devotee, it can really shut things down. Tied with Token Collector is Droll, which saw both main and side deck play. Not quite as popular as in some of the older formats, but since so many decks are playing 60 card piles, they certainly have room to just squish in whatever hand traps that exist. After that we have Ghost Spell, which primarily saw main deck play and has some pretty good uses, especially since it can hit part of the Brave engine in Enchantress. This card will also be really good once the Alba structure deck cards are legal and branded fusion shenanigans become popular. At number 10 we have Ghost Reaper, which we don't see often on these analyses, and it is predominantly a side deck hand trap of course. Considering how so many decks are running DPE, this card is certainly a way to get rid of your opponent's DPE easily. So as you'll notice, Artifact Lancia did not make it to top 10, even though in the last YCS it was actually the most played hand trap. 5 of the 28 lists played Lancia, and while preventing banishing is quite good, I have also noticed that it just doesn't do enough right now. Now let's cover the most played side deck staples, and so for those that are new to the channel, I'm not going to be covering generic staples like pot cards or even packages like Brave Token or Magician's Souls, but purely cards that you would traditionally consider as potential side cards that can be run in any deck. So starting off, we have Call by the Grave, which surprisingly a good chunk tend to side deck this card instead of maining it, considering the high number of hand traps being run, and also being able to banish the opponent's DPE or Scythe makes this card really useful in this current format, despite only being at 1. Next, we have our first back row removal card in Twin Twisters. Being a quick play is probably why it is more popular than Feather Duster, since you can try to clear your opponent's Prank Kid's Pandemonium or Floowandereeze trap on the draw or standby phase, since those cards can only be activated in the main phase. Speaking of quick plays, we then have Forbidden Droplets, a super expensive card that while some argue is not great this format because of Herald existing, clearly most of the topping lists are still playing this card. After that, we have Crossout Designator, which after the initial months upon release really did not see much play and tanked in price, but now that so many decks are running 60 cards and also a ton of hand traps, it makes sense to play this to try to counter opponents' hand traps. Next, we have Cosmic Cyclone, yet another quick play back row removal. The card can be more useful than Twin Twisters in certain situations since you can banish the opponent's Scythe and prevent it from coming back. And speaking of back row, we also have Harpy's Feather Duster, all-sided if played at all. Considering how powerful it is, certainly not seeing it in a lot of lists like we used to back when the card got taken off the ban list. After this, we have the one and only Mystic Mine, which can just be an auto win button against many decks depending on the game state. And then we have Book of Moon, which of course is predominantly played by Floowandereeze to dodge Imperm or Veiler on their normal summons, but it is also a card that can be used going second to force out negates, making it a worthy staple to put in this part of the analysis. Tied with Book of Moon is Dark Ruler No More, also seen in 5 lists. Monster effect negations are quite handy right now, and although of course this card is not going to be helpful against something like a Scythe trigger, still really helpful to clear boards, so shouldn't be a surprise that it's still seeing play. After that, we have Triple Tactics Talent, which also has been seeing decline in play, but at least it's still sticking around. This card is sort of the same category as Call By and Crossout Designator to help you play through hand traps, and considering we have so many hand traps being played right now, not surprising to see this here as well. Alright guys, so that was it for another top cut breakdown of the most played hand traps and staples. Hope that was helpful in adjusting your list for the next event. As always, just wanted to thank my Patreons, Eileen Dice Queen, Bolt Spider, Cybernetic, Brandon G, and Bearlord. Thanks for your continued support. If you enjoyed the video guys, it'd be great if you could subscribe for more analytical content. Take care guys.